Welcome live to the Fowler Show on this Valentine's Day edition. I do hope you're having a fantastic day with your other half or not. So I just want to tune in to see Eric Bischoff on the show because he is here and he's looking and feeling and he is better than ever. If I do say so myself, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome to the show, Eric Bischoff.
Well, thank you, Ed. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation to the fans in the UK.
Yes, indeed. I thank you for that. Of course, you've probably been to Manchester many times over your illustrious career. Did you get time to, when you did come over here, when you could, did you get time to sightsee in Manchester?
You know, I have on occasions. I've been to Manchester, as you pointed out, many times, and there have been occasions where I've had more free time while I've been in Manchester than others. And on those occasions, you know, I just like to walk around. I like to just explore by foot and, you know, go to the parts of Manchester where, you know, people work and eat and, you know, conduct business on a day-to-day basis. I generally don't go to tourist destinations necessarily because, sometimes I feel like you don't really get a feel for a city, you know, when you're going to places that are designed just for tourists. So I like to walk around. I like to go to a local pub, you know, that's off the beaten path, or go into a local curry shop that's off the beaten path and kind of intermingle with you know, the common folk, if you will, the people
Yes.
that live there and work there on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to going to places that are really more designed for tourists.
Fair enough. And I guess as well, you want to get a different, you know, feel to the city to just going to the same old tourist destinations in a particular city you may go to. So you want to get down to the nitty-gritty of the culture and experience different food and drinks and everything like that as well, which is quite good.
Yeah, no, I've always loved to explore. I've always loved to visit, you know, other countries and other cultures and really get a sense for what, you know, day-to-day life is really like when I go into a new city or a new country. And I found that, like I said, it's much easier to get an honest feel for a city or a country or the culture that's in it if you just take a walk off the beaten path. And my favorite thing is to just go to a local pub and strike up a conversation, because I found that I learn much more about a city or a culture just by talking to someone at a local pub who's feeling chatty.
Yes. You can get plenty of them over here in a local pub, drunk at any time of the day. Doesn't matter if it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll find somebody who's drunk already, who's happy to talk to you about anything. This is quite good. But I mean, I do hope you enjoyed your many times visiting the great city of Manchester, UK, and we do hope you'll be back in Manchester again at some point in the future.
I very much look forward to it. I've been talking to a good friend of mine and a person that I do business with on occasion, Kenny McIntosh with Inside the Ropes. Kenny has brought me over for a one-man show on a number of occasions. And I think, you know, actually, I think he did bring me into Manchester.
Yes,
but we absolutely will be coming back as soon as it's appropriate and permissible.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you know, live events are just not on anybody's short-term schedule, but hopefully that'll change in the near future. And probably one of the first tours I do will be in the UK.
Good, because the people of the UK love you, and you know, it wouldn't be quite the same without having a one-man band, without having Eric Bischoff headlining it first before he brings in, you know, the great Jim Rosses or the Tony Savonis or, you know, the great Chris Jerichos or the Goldbergs, whoever he may choose to bring in down the line. But I mean, like, as well, when you came to these, you know, local pubs and whatnot, did you enjoy the food sizes and different like I know where you're from, the food is quite massive, as we will say over here. So when you first went into a pub or went to a meal over here, I bet you were quite surprised at how little the food was.
You know, not really. I've been born, or I guess maybe because of the way I grew up, I love all kinds of food. I love exploring. Again, part of exploring a different culture or a different country, is, enjoying the local food. And whether it's fish and chips or any of the foods that you find so common, in the UK, I enjoy them all.
That's good.
So in fact, I don't eat a lot of typical American food, believe it or not. My diet is primarily, fish, and a big part of that is sushi, which is obviously Japanese. Yeah. I love curry. I love Indian food in general, but curry in particular. And when I don't eat hamburgers. I don't eat hot dogs. I don't eat, a lot of meat. I do eat meat, but it's usually meat from animals that I've harvested myself, like elk or deer. In some cases, wild hog, pheasants, ducks, geese, because I like to hunt. I like to fish. But one of the reasons I like to hunt and fish is because I know where my food is coming from. Yeah. I know how my food is processed because I'm processing it myself. And because I know where my food came from, I also know what, if I harvest an elk or a deer for venison, I know the area that I'm harvesting that animal in. I know what it's eating. I know that in most cases where I typically hunt, it's very pristine environments without a lot of chemicals and fertilizer and all the other things. So I know some people have a different take on hunting, but I do it not only because I enjoy it, but because I'm really very concerned about the quality of the food I eat and how it's harvested and processed.
That makes sense. And we'll get back to your ranch, because I believe it's a ranch you live at in Wyoming.
Well, ranch is a relative term. If you live in a flat in downtown Manchester, then you probably would feel like you're on a ranch if you're at my home. I've got about 22 acres here, which in Wyoming is considered a plot,
right,
or a lot. Ranches typically out here are in the hundreds, if not thousands, of acres, and they're actually working ranches where they grow cattle or sheep or hay and alfalfa and all that kind of stuff. So mine is just a big piece of property. I have no animals on my property other than my wife and I and my dog. I guess we qualify, but we don't graze outside.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. Now, speaking of your dog, I don't know what breed it is, but you can tell me in a minute. Now, I have 2 huskies, okay, and I don't know if you ever had this happen with one of your dogs, but with one of my huskies, we were walking down the road one day, and it decided to grab a live bird and try to bring it home with it, kind of thing, before a woman would start screaming and saying, "You got a bird in its mouth. This dog's got a bird in its mouth," kind of thing. So, has that ever happened to you? Have you ever seen your dog try and bring home a live bird back to your house?
No. My dog is an Australian cattle dog, or also known as a blue heeler, and it's a very specific breed that was bred in part, and I think the person who originated the breed was from the UK originally, that moved to Australia and wanted to raise sheep and cattle and so forth, and they needed a dog that could herd effectively cattle and sheep. But the conditions in Australia that a lot of these sheep ranchers found themselves in was a much harsher environment than what they were used to in the UK. So the dogs that they brought with them from the UK didn't hold up quite as well in the harsher environment. So they started, and this was quite a while, this is 100 years ago or 150 years ago, they started combining this, the original breed that they brought from the UK with some of the local breeds in Australia, one of which is a dingo, which is a wild dog native to Australia. And through a period of decades of crossbreeding, these various dogs that originated in the UK, they came up with a breed called the Australian cattle dog, or blue heeler. That's what my dog is. And one of the characteristics
that's great.
dog,
you're back.
Decide to go out and retrieve a bird, bringing it home alive would not be high on the list of the priorities in my dog's head. Bring it home, maybe. Bring it home alive, not so much.
Fair enough. But I mean, I'm just saying, in the future, maybe, if you have another dog in the future, whatnot, and you decide to bring home a live animal, you can fit in your mouth, would you eat it? Would you would you cook it?
Well, no, probably not. The wild game that my wife and I eat is, it's very specific. Like I said, pheasant, which is obviously people hunt pheasants. Driven pheasant hunts in the UK are legendary.
Yeah.
Ducks and geese, are the wild fowl or wild birds. In the case of a pheasant, it's not fowl, but that's the wild birds that we eat. Specifically, elk, deer, antelope are the primary meat sources, wild game that we eat. So no, we don't eat, roadkill or, obscure animals that my dog finds under the deck or anything like that.
That's fair.
We're not that hardcore.
That's fair. Okay, so we got a few pre-recorded questions in for you, Mr. Bischoff. After I announced yesterday you're coming on the show. So I apologize if I do pronounce a word incorrectly. I hope you will know what I mean. I'll try my best to change the word. But we'll start with a YouTube question we've got, because this is a guy who I know called Mike. He says, what was your main strategy when competing with Vince? Also, what was your main strategy when you were working with Vince McMahon?
Well, the primary strategy, I think what really created the success, at the foundation of the success of Nitro, which is really the first time we were competing in a real way with the WWE. Prior to Nitro in 95, WCW was in the professional wrestling business, so was WWE, but there was no direct competition. We were just both in the same industry. But once Nitro became a reality and our show Nitro was positioned head-to-head at the same time on a different network as Monday Night Raw, then it became a legitimate competition. And at the core of that strategy when we launched Nitro was to be different than the WWE. I didn't want to try to be better at at what WWE was already good at. Their characters were very animated, almost cartoonish characters that were really created to appeal to an audience that was 2 to 11 years old. That's a very specific demographic that advertisers categorize and look at. And it's a very profitable demographic if you're able to do a good job, get with ratings and become popular in that demographic, because kids buy toys. Well, kids don't buy toys, but the parents buy the toys that the kids want, right? There's a lot of things that are marketed towards children, and it was a very profitable category for WWE, and that's what their entire business model was built upon. So when I launched Nitro, I had a choice. I knew I could either try to be better or even be as good as WWE was in targeting that audience, or I could be different and target a different segment of the audience. And I knew early on that it would be a fool's errand, if you will, to try to be better at the WWE at something that they were already so good at, and they had such a long-term history of success in that category. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to try to be better than them. I'm going to focus on being different than them. And I literally made a list 5 minutes after I walked out of Ted Turner's office when he told me he wanted to go head-to-head with the WWF. I was in my office with a legal notepad and a pen, and I literally made a list of all the ways that I could be different than the WWF. And that strategy was so important, because had I tried to be better than the WWE or WWF, as they were referred to at that time, I would have failed miserably, and Nitro would have been a disaster. But by being different and going after a different audience and presenting the product, and this is the key part of that, because I was appealing to a different audience, I had to change the presentation. meaning my stories had to be more adult themed and oriented. And by that, I don't mean necessarily on a gratuitous sexual kind of way. That's not what I mean by adult themed, but more sophisticated stories. The characters had to be more relatable to an adult than a midget clown in WWF.
Yeah.
That was a very, that was a very appealing type character for kids because it was really like a living cartoon is what the WWE was doing at the time. My stories and my characters, we had to have more of them that were more adult themed and adult designed to appeal to adult demographic. And by doing that, we literally changed the business
forever.
Because if even today, I call them dirt sheet writers, and that's a little derisive, and I don't mean it to be, but people who are on the periphery of the wrestling business that write about it, whether online or otherwise, now they're all talking about how important the male 18 to 49-year-old demographic is. Well, guess who made it important?
You.
I did. Nitro did. That's another example of how Nitro changed the wrestling business forever, because now that WWE is focused on that male 18 to 49-year-old demo, AEW is focused on that male 18 to 49-year-old demo. That wasn't the case until Nitro came along back in 1995. So again, that's just one example of how being different than the WWE not only was successful, but changed the industry forever.
And the other question was the same strategy, but working with the great Vince McMahon, as other people will say, the great. Again, you may have a different opinion on that. I'm probably you don't. You probably do agree with that statement, probably. But over to you.
No, I actually do agree with it. I think Vince McMahon, although he certainly has received a lot of credit over the decades, I don't think he's deserved. He's received enough credit for what he's accomplished. And people that have grown up watching WWE, or even people who grew up watching WCW when we were, competing with the WWE, don't remember or weren't around when professional wrestling in the United States was. It was almost barbaric in its presentation. I don't mean from a violence point of view, but from a production value point of view, it was so. The production values were non-existent. The stories and the character line, the storylines and the characters were, a lot of them were some of the best, in my opinion, that we've seen even today. There were some great characters from back in that day, but the presentation was so small, and it was targeted to a very small local audience, because people don't realize that. Today we read about, WWE getting, a $5 billion licensing fee from Fox to carry the show. Well, when Vince McMahon back in the late 80s decided to change the wrestling model, all of the professional wrestling around the United States was produced for television at a loss by the promoters. Promoters weren't getting paid for the television product. It was what we call here in the United States a lost leader, meaning they put the show on television in a local market for the sole purpose of selling tickets to a live event that was going to happen later that week or later that month. There was no revenue created by the television show itself. It was a cost. It wasn't a revenue stream. Well, Vince McMahon changed all that. In addition to, Vince McMahon was the pioneer in wrestling on pay-per-view. Vince McMahon, was the pioneer of creating a professional wrestling show for cable television that became and still is one of the highest rated shows of all time on cable television consistently. So Vince is not without controversy. Don't get me wrong. No successful, aggressive, passionate person ever will be without controversy. But I admire Vince McMahon. On a professional level, I admire him on a personal level. I enjoy being around Vince. He's tough to work for. I will tell you that. I do not miss working for Vince McMahon, but I do miss being around Vince McMahon because he's a very brilliant, although complex individual.
That's fair. That's fair. I do have a question for you, though. Back 21 years ago, you reappeared on WCW Nitro with grey hair. Then in 2002, no offense, in 2002, you then came a part of Monday Night War as the general manager with your black, slick hair. Whose decision was it to dye your hair? Was it your decision, or was it Vince McMahon's decision when you were brought into Monday Night War? Why didn't you just keep it white?
Yeah, I wanted to. I didn't like dyeing my hair.
I didn't know you dye your hair. I didn't know you dye your hair until Eugene shaved it off back in, I think it was like 2004, 2005. That's when I knew it was white. Before that, I never knew it was white because I never saw WCW because I was too young. But I did, however, see the best war in the Ruthless Aggression era when it was white, when he cut it off. But go ahead.
Right. No, well, my hair actually started turning silver when I was about 28 or 30 years old.
Okay.
And it happened very slowly. In fact, I was so young. I remember the first gray hair or silver hair. My hair was more, now it's white as I've gotten older, but for a long time it was kind of almost a silver. Yeah. It was almost chrome colored, But I remember the first time I saw gray hair in my head, I looked up in the mirror. I'm going, what the hell? I have, now get this, Edward. I said, I have a dead hair.
Oh, wow.
Like a dead hair, right? Like, I thought, well, I'm going to pull this dead hair out. So I pulled it out, and then a couple of weeks later, I go, wow, there's 3 or 4 more dead hairs. Why is my hair dying? And then my wife heard me. She said, Eric, those are not dead hairs. Those are gray hairs. They're perfectly fine. They're just turning gray. And I thought, no, I'm too young for this. This can't be happening to me. And then I started dyeing my hair because about that same time, I started, for the very first time, doing television for AWA. So I started dyeing my hair, and then, it kept getting more and more gray, and I kept dyeing it, and people didn't know until I shaved my head. A lot of people didn't know. But the fact of the matter is my hair still is so thick, and it grows so fast that oftentimes, I'd dye my hair on a Monday, and by Friday, it had already grown out like 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch. I don't know what that is in centimeters or millimeters in the UK, but it would start growing out, right? And you can see literally a silver stripe down the top of my head where my hair naturally parted. I looked like, I don't know if you remember the cartoon or if you ever saw it in the UK. There was a cartoon character called Pepe Le Pew. He was a cartoon skunk. And I started looking like the cartoon skunk because my hair was all black except for the white stripe going down the middle of my head.
Oh, my word. I don't blame you for dyeing it all the way back then.
But to answer your question, because I often go off, I apologize.
It's fine.
But to answer your question, it was actually Stephanie McMahon's idea for me to dye my hair when I came to WWF in 2002. I really didn't want to, but at that point, when you're a talent, you take direction from the people who direct the show. So they opted for me to come back with black hair, and I started dyeing it again.
Yeah. Until you got shaved off by Eugene a few years later, and then you could go all white, which is quite good, which I bet you were happy about because you never go out and buy the dye hairspray every week or every month or however often you had to dye it for. We do have another question coming for you. Someone wants to know how are you and how are you and Mrs. B celebrating Valentine's Day?
Well, I'm very well. Thank you for asking. I fortunately, and I'm blessed and I'm grateful for the blessing of great health. I'm probably as healthy or healthier now than I have been in the last 20 years. Thanks to Mrs. B, I'm watching my diet. I'm getting a lot of exercise, very, very focused on health and nutrition over the last 10 or 15 years. And now with COVID, paying even more attention, to, nutrition and how we eat and what we drink and that type of thing. So my health is excellent. Right now, here, I live in Cody, Wyoming, which is in the extreme northwest corner of the state of Wyoming, right next to Yellowstone National Park. and it's about 15 degrees below zero. Again, not sure what that is in Celsius, but you can Google it.
Yes.
And there's about 18 inches of snow on the ground, so it's very winter-like here. So we're in the house. I'm out of my office, obviously doing this, but this morning I surprised Mrs. B. We've both been so busy. We were traveling for like 2 months over the Christmas holidays. Like all of December we were gone, all of January we were gone visiting friends and family and traveling. And we just got back home about 2 weeks ago, actually slightly less than 2 weeks ago. And ever since we've gotten home, we've been really busy just catching up on all the things that, we weren't doing while we were on the road traveling and visiting over the holidays. So we've been very, very busy. So busy that Mrs. B, Lori, who never misses a holiday, she loves Valentine's Day. It's her favorite, other than maybe the 4th of July and Christmas, one of her favorite holidays. Well, we've been so busy, she actually forgot that it was Valentine's Day. And I knew that because she hadn't mentioned anything. Right? So yesterday, I had to run in and pick some things up from the grocery store and run a couple errands. And I thought, I'm going to surprise her. So I bought her a big bouquet of roses and a little box of chocolates and a Valentine's Day card. And I was able to sneak them into the house when she wasn't, she was in a different room. And I hid them up in my office inside the house. So this morning I got up very early, like 5:30 a.m. or 6 a.m., made coffee, and I got a big tray and I put the roses and the chocolates and the card and her coffee on a big tray, and I served her coffee and chocolate in bed with the roses and the card. She was floored because I've never surprised her with a holiday like that. She's never forgotten one. So it was a special morning. And then we just enjoyed our coffee together and caught up on news and emails and checking with friends. And now I'm here talking to you. Yes. Not sure what we're going to do the rest of the day, but that was my day so far.
I like it. Different, and it's unique as well. I wonder what will be in the store for you two next Valentine's Day. That's what I'm looking forward to.
So am I.
We might have to do that. We might do an annual thing, Eric Bischoff.
Yeah, well, and see, the good news is I was the one that surprised her. I brought her coffee and chocolate and caramel in bed and with roses. So I've raised the bar sufficiently that now she's going to have her best game.
Yes.
Next Valentine's Day.
Also, the same person who asked that question also says, this person is still jealous of your hair. Eric knows I'm bald and appreciate good hair long. That was from Rajiv, if I say R-A-J-I-V.
Yeah, Rajiv is one of our, we call him cousins, or at least I do. We have the adfreeshows.com platform where
please plug it.
All of the podcasts that we do, like my podcast, Arn Anderson's, Jim Ross's, Tony Schiavone's, Bruce Pritchard's, Kurt Angle has now joined the network. And all of our podcasts are available without any advertising at adfreeshows.com, hence the name Ad Free Shows. But we also produce a ton of bonus content, from animation to really super exclusive interviews that people have never seen before with key figures in the industry. Right now, there's one that just came up yesterday with a gentleman by the name of Jim Crockett, who was really the original, NWA promoter that most people are aware of. He's never really done an interview like this before, but he's there. And Rajiv is, and all of the people that subscribe or are members, I hate even calling them members, because they become a part of our family. We do a lot of live things during the course of any given week. We have live Zoom chats, so people that are members can come on and interact with us in any number of different shows that we do. And it's just a blast. And Rajiv is one of our original cousins over at Ad Free Shows, and just a great addition to the family because he contributes a lot as well.
Well, that's good.
We love that.
That's good to hear. Now, also as well, another question for you. You may not have been in control of this, but I was quite saddened when once you guys came to TNA. well, not quite. Well, regarding the theme tune, not actually your appearance in TNA. I loved when yourself, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan all came to TNA and whatnot. I was very excited. I thought maybe this could be turned into something huge, and maybe WCW version 2 at the time, and I thought that over 10 years ago. The theme tune, it was great. Cross the line was what I'm referring to. The cross the line. Everybody's doing their own thing. Do you know why that was replaced? Because I thought there was no need for it to be replaced. I thought it came in, I think, 2008 when that theme debuted in TNA, and it was only 2 or 3 years old. Were you in control of changing that theme tune, or was that somebody else above your pay grade?
No, I was not involved in management at all at TNA. So whatever decisions and choices that were made, most of the time I was not even aware of them till after they were made and we saw it on television. So no, I wasn't involved in any of that.
Fair enough. Well, if you do know the people who were in control of that, well, you can say thank you very much, because I did not enjoy any theme tune after Cross the Line. I thought it was a perfect fit to when you guys came
Can I
over.
give you a professional tip?
Yeah.
Don't sing.
Okay, I won't. I won't sing. But yeah, it's good because it was my favorite theme of TNA, and I'm not a. I don't like any other theme that has come across since that theme. I thought I was like it, because to me it felt like the Monday Night Wars theme of Across the Nations. With the I'm not going to sing it to you, but you should know what theme I'm talking about because you were appearing on that intro many times in your illustrious career. So I just wanted to ask that question to you if you knew that. So let's talk about this. Of course, in 2020, it was actually 20 years since when you debuted on on TNT. You then came making a surprise debut on AEW on TNT. Were you very happy to be returning back to AEW on TNT for the first time in 20 years?
Yeah, it was fun, and here's the fun thing about, AEW.
Yeah, please do. I watch it every Friday on ITV4, by the way, because I'm in the UK, but people go to on Fight TV as well on Wednesdays at 1 a.m. UK time.
So, when I go to AEW, I think I've been there twice, and I don't know. I'm hoping to be there again sometime in the future. So keep an eye out. That's kind of a hint.
Yes. Can't wait.
But one of the reasons I enjoy going is because there are so many people in AEW behind the scenes, in particular, that used to work for me in WCW. Keith Mitchell, the director, used to work for me. There's any number of cameramen that I've worked with. Either they worked for me in WCW, or they worked with me in TNA, or they worked with me in WWE. So for me, it's kind of like going back to my old neighborhood in a way, and visiting friends that I haven't seen in a long time, and working with people that I haven't worked with in a long time. So I thoroughly enjoy that. I love performing. I'm not going to lie. I enjoy being a character, and I love the challenge of, trying to find a new way to present, a character. So I love doing it. I'm grateful anytime I get an opportunity to step in front of a camera. And I do a similar, I'm scheduled to do some stuff for WWE here next month. So I have the luxury, because I'm not under contract with anybody. I can work with WWE, I can work with AEW, and whenever I get those opportunities, I'm generally working with people who I've known for a long time. And same thing happens in WWE, obviously. So I always enjoy an opportunity, but I think AEW in particular, because, my first appearance there was my first appearance back on TNT, and I went out 20 years. So it had that little bit of special appeal for me, and it was fun.
It was fun, and I knew you were going to debut on there because I think either 2 or 3 weeks before that, Tony Khan and you had a conversation on.
Right.
I think it was on your podcast, and when I saw that in my recommendations, I knew exactly then that at some point in a matter of weeks or months, you were going to end up on AEW Dynamite. And within the few weeks of me thinking that, it happened. And it was best for business with you and, of course, Le Champion, Chris Jericho, who I've said many times on my show, maybe he should hang the boots up, because he's gotten better now, but sometime in 2020 he looked a bit knackered during a tag team match, and I thought maybe he may want to go a bit more into the music world, because he's a big music star, but he's still got it in him today. Just want to clear that up for Hey It's Mel, because she saw an interview I did with some guy called Jason Cade. I don't know if you know who he is. Maybe one day you might. But I'll tell you one thing, though, about him. He did get his head kicked off him by Aleister Black on Monday Night Raw last year after being rude, after he accused me of being rude to him. Anyway, how was it going back to that place then, and seeing like the champion Chris Jericho? Did anybody knew you were going to be on the show beforehand, or did he just bring you?
No, a lot of the creative. Chris Jericho was driving the creative in terms of that appearance. So I knew, Chris and I have been, we're good friends, yes. And I have nothing but respect for Chris. So I was excited. First of all, Chris is so talented and is so experienced, has the ability to be improvisational and creative while being improvisational. And I really enjoy that. So it was great working with Chris. He and I had been discussing the creative briefly. It wasn't very complicated creative, so it didn't take a lot of time. But yeah, we were working back and forth, and it's always fun to work with Chris. He's a very talented individual.
He is very funny. I do, he's got to be one of the funniest heels in the business today. He's just hilarious just to watch him perform every Wednesday night. Because I don't know what's happening next with the Inner Circle with all his gang members. However, but I'm so happy that Sammy Guevara's got himself out of the Inner Circle now, because I always said that he should have been able to reach out to the world and show everybody his ability without being a part of a gang, and we can finally get to see that, hopefully, in the coming weeks. But did you know when you spoke to Tony Khan on that podcast on 83 Weeks on your YouTube channel that you guys were going to work together immediately afterwards? No. I mean, no, I didn't. I have a very unusual relationship with the professional wrestling industry. I'm obviously aware that my career is in my rearview mirror. Yes.
I'm not part of the current product, and nor should I be, in my opinion. So I'm very comfortable with the role that I have. I don't watch a lot of I do watch some of the current product, both WWE and AEW, but I'm not what I would consider to be an avid fan, meaning I don't watch a 3-hour Monday Night Raw or a 2-hour AEW show or a 2-hour, SmackDown on Fox. I don't. My life has changed. My interests have evolved and changed. So when I have time to sit down and watch television, it's normally National Geographic or the History Channel or a cooking show. I love watching cooking shows, but I don't watch a lot of television.
Fair enough.
So, and I'm perfectly comfortable. But when I did, when I talked to Tony Khan and we had that first, opportunity to exchange, in a dialogue, I felt very good about Tony. I mean, he made such a strong, positive impression on me as number one, a very intelligent guy. Number two, a very passionate individual, clearly articulate, committed to what he's doing. And I thought, wow, good for him. I was a fan of his after that YouTube video. And it didn't surprise me, honestly, that he reached out. I was grateful, but not surprised.
That's fair. Of course, Tony Khan is one of the biggest names now in all of entertainment, because before 2019, not many people knew who he was, apart from being a part of the Jaguars and Fulham FC. Nobody really knew who he was, really, apart from that. But now the whole world gets to know who Mr. Tony Khan is for the right reasons as well.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure if Tony is like me, and probably like most people, who all of a sudden become fairly well known because of television. There's a lot of great things about that. I won't deny that. But there's also some negative things about that. And, you have to learn to accept the good with the bad and just kind of let all the negative things roll off your back, and just enjoy and embrace the positive things. But it sounds really easy. But when you're a passionate person and you're committed to what you're doing, and there are people out there who just because they love to be negative, they love to have their voices heard in social media, and usually that's by being negative. It still stings a little bit. People can say whatever they want. I know myself. I've said, that stuff doesn't really bother me. But honestly, if I'm very, very candid with myself, they do. It does bother you. You wish it wouldn't. It's human nature. Nobody likes to be the subject or target of somebody's venomous attacks in social media just because they want to get attention. But it still stings a little bit. But hopefully Tony will get used to that and not let it get to him.
Yeah, I don't think he has. I think he's got a good backbone like yourself, Eric. I think he does because, he's got, people talk what they want about Tony Khan, and I don't pay attention to the dirt sheets because there's been some hilarious stories that come from them. But I see them on my Google. I get notifications from Google every day about stories to do with WWE and AEW, and I just laugh. I don't read them. I just read the title. Sometimes they make me laugh, sometimes they don't. But I mean, most of the time I think, okay, whatever. I just see what happens, if that makes sense, if that's true or not, kind of thing. I don't go up to what the dirt sheets say because, again, I don't believe anything they say, just like you don't. And that's why if I would have a dirt sheet on, I would have them instead of yourself, Eric. But I mean, I would have the real deal on the show. Before we move on, now I want to give you a throwback. ECW 2005, you were there with the Raw and SmackDown brand. Because my next question is coming from former ECW referee who was a part of that same show, by the way, called John Peary Moore, a.k.a. John Marks 1975 on Instagram. He wrote this to us. He wants to know this from you. Why did he not put Scott Steiner and Bret Hart in a program? ? The best two techno wrestlers in that generation would have kept WCW relevant for another 2 to 3 years.
Well, that's his opinion. Certainly not mine. And this is one of the things that, it's a type of comment or question that people who have never really run a wrestling company or been on the creative side of a wrestling company, just because you were a referee or a timekeeper or you put the ring up, or any other, role within a wrestling company doesn't necessarily make you knowledgeable about other aspects of a wrestling company, particularly one that you had never been involved with. And I don't mean that to sound like a criticism, but because this individual represents himself to be a former referee in ECW or WWE at the time, certainly has credibility in many respects about refereeing, but not necessarily about creative, is my point. And I would say, there was probably any number of reasons. First and foremost, from a creative perspective, while I understand certain people, a small, by the way, percentage of the audience, a very small percentage of the audience, watches wrestling primarily because they appreciate the technical wrestling that they see. The vast majority of the audience, and this is supported by decades of research, current and past, the vast majority of the people that watch wrestling watch it because of the storylines and watch it because of the characters. Technical wrestling is way down the list of what the average person watches wrestling for. Keep in mind, when you're writing and producing any television show, including professional wrestling, you're doing it to attract the largest audience possible. And you can't attract the largest audience possible with a strategy that appeals primarily to the smallest percentage of that audience. The chemistry between Bret Hart and Scott Steiner would not have been there.
Right.
The appeal, just the headline appeal to Scott Steiner and Bret Hart would not have appealed to the largest portion of the audience. Those are two really good reasons right there. But the core, in last, I guess, but not least, is the fact that there were better opportunities. Bret Hart, Ric Flair. Eventually, hopefully, well, it didn't never happen because of a variety of reasons, but Bret Hart, Hulk Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
Bret Hart, Bill Goldberg did happen, unfortunately.
Yes.
So there were much better marquee type matchups within our immediate grasp that would appeal to the largest percentage of the audience, not the small percentage of the audience that just loves technical wrestling.
That's a fair point. That makes sense. To him, of course, that was me saying he was a former ECW referee because I just wanted to throw that in because you two happened to be on the same show back in 2005 in the Hammerstone Ballroom in New York City. I still got on VHS, by the way. That's how old it is. I've converted from VHS to DVD many years ago. But, I mean, great pay-per-view. I love the pay-per-view. You, however, didn't have a great night at the end of the show. You got carried out and put on some thing in the parking lot or outside the building. I couldn't really see where it was because it was so black. But you got carried out of there. And then a few months later, you then get FU'd and put into a garbage truck, which I'll never forget on TV ever again. But I mean, after that, in my opinion, there has never been a general manager who has lasted longer than you did, if you know what I mean. Because I felt that nobody, whoever they brought in after you, would last or would fit into the program, and that was right. Because, whoever they brought in lasted about a year or so afterwards, and then eventually they got rid of the general manager altogether. But I mean, I did enjoy the time you had then. I thought you'd always be the best general manager in the history of World Wrestling Entertainment, in my opinion. Again, you may think, no, that's not correct. But that's your opinion, of course.
No, in this case, Edward, I think you were absolutely 100% spot on, my friend.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I just wish you could still be the general manager today, but I can understand why, because you've done all the same stories. It'd be very boring to redo them all over and over again. So I can understand eventually why you and Vince decided to part ways and stuff like that. So it makes perfect sense. But maybe one day, maybe you can redo that role in a different company. Maybe you never know.
I think the idea of the heel authority figure has been so dominant in wrestling stories for the last 2 decades, almost more, that just the concept itself is fatigued. It needs a rest. I think authority figures are necessary in framework and structure of storytelling. There has to be a commissioner, a boss, a general manager, whatever you want to call it. But without some arbiter of rules and matchmaking and just the essential framework that you use to tell wrestling stories, it's hard for the audience to kind of understand why so much of what they're seeing is happening. If you don't understand the rules, if wrestlers, for example, this is one of my biggest pet peeves. WWE is guilty of it, and so is everybody else. I can't stand it when wrestlers make matches with other wrestlers.
Yeah.
What gives them the authority?
Yeah, I get.
Where is the structure? Where is the story behind it? How does that happen? It would be like having, a football game in the UK with no rules. There's no time limit. There's no, you want to use your hands, use your hands. It's okay.
Yeah.
And one football team can decide they want to play another football team next week just because they do. Yeah. I mean, it's nonsensical. And every story needs some framework, some structure to it in order for the audience to understand it, even if it's fiction, to understand the story as it's progressing through its arc. But without any rules and without any structure, it becomes just haphazard.
Yeah.
And I think the general manager or the authority figure is part of the key to that. However, to my point, I think it's been overdone so much for so long that the audience needs a rest. So that down the road, someday, if somebody decides to have another heel authority figure, that it feels fresh, even though the idea isn't. But it's been so long since we've seen it, It feels like it is.
Yeah, because people will
hopefully
probably
that'll
forget as well. And
Yeah, because it's an amazing tool from a storytelling point of view,
mm,
and it's an amazing tool because look, Edward, everybody. Well, I won't say everybody. A large percentage of the population and the audience for wrestling, therefore, resent their boss. They
yeah,
don't like their job. They don't like their boss or their professor or their teacher or anybody else who has control over their lives, right?
hmm
They don't like it. And there's a natural human instinct to resist those people around you that you don't like. So having a boss or an authority figure in this case that's a heel is something that's very relatable to probably 99 and 9/10% of the people that watch it.
hmm
And because it's relatable and identifiable, same thing, I guess, it becomes a very valuable tool if it's not used improperly or overused. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
We will see indeed. But I'm glad. That I'm very happy. I'm not the only person who thinks the same as Bischoff there, because I also thought the same. When I first saw that a few years ago, when they decided to ditch the whole general manager authority figure thing, and then letting wrestlers choose whoever they want to fight. Like, you meet me in the ring this evening, it's like, you say, that's bizarre. Where's the person in charge to make it official? But it makes sense as well, as you say. Good points. Now, I do want to say to you that it is 52 minutes past the hour. So if you do need to go, let me know. Okay.
No, we've got a few more. We've got a few more minutes.
Okay.
Let's go ahead.
I don't want to say to you, in the video games, when you were the authority figure in the video games, they made you the baddie as always, because you were in real life. I hated having you input my game, because you always put myself, and me with viewers probably as well, in hard matches. Like, for instance, when we were like a champion or want to be a champion, you would put us in like a 4-way or 5-way match, against this great heel who you were on side with, and I never used to like you in the video games. It wasn't you who was doing it. It was other people making you look bad in doing that. It was harder to fight for it, even harder to get the championship. So I never really liked you in the video games than I did in person, if that makes sense. But but there you go. Also, as well, back when I mentioned about you being thrown into a garbage truck, were you very happy with that, being thrown into a garbage truck by John Cena back in 2005? Did you have any input in that decision, or did you say, hey, this is our way to get rid of you, we're going to put you in a garbage truck and take you out of the building that way?
No, I actually thought it was a great way to end, my career with WWE. By that time, and by the way, it was Vince McMahon that threw me in the garbage truck, not John Cena. John Cena hit me with, no, that's okay. I just want to be clear.
It's been a long time.
John Cena hit me with an FU.
That's right.
And then Vince McMahon came up, scooped me up, threw me in the garbage truck. Actually, when I first saw the creative for that, they had sent me the creative a couple of days in advance. And when I first saw the creative, John Cena was the one that was going to throw me in the garbage truck.
Okay.
And I thought, well, that's kind of makes sense, I guess. But wouldn't it make more sense for Vince McMahon to do it?
Yeah.
Because Vince McMahon brought me into WWE as a character. He famously introduced me as the guy who was going to take over as general manager, and it seemed to me that the best way to end my story in WWE was for the guy that brought me in to be the guy that took me out. And I actually called the office. They had a creative at the time. I think it was Brian Gewirtz, and said, hey, whatever you guys want to do, I'm going to do. But doesn't it make more sense to have Vince McMahon do it? It's kind of, the battle between Vince and I going back to when we were head to head and I was running WCW and all of that history and that backstory that people were so familiar with. I thought, in terms of satisfying the audience, wouldn't the audience be more satisfied to see Vince do it finally after all these years? And I suggested Vince do it, and they made the change, and I thought it was great. I thought that was a great way to end my role as a general manager there, because as we were talking about earlier, in my opinion, it was getting boring. there's only so many ways to tell a story with a general manager. And I'm not a wrestler, so I can't get in there and get physical, not in a believable way in a wrestling match with talent. So I have to be that underhanded, smarmy, evil guy that's always manipulating people behind the scenes. That was my power, in WWE as a general manager. But there's only so many ways to tell that story before the audience just they accept it, but they're not excited about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was actually as a performer, Edward, I was getting bored in the role. And I've been around long enough to know that if I'm getting bored with the role, so is the audience. So I was actually grateful that they decided to kind of end my run as general manager. And I thought Vince McMahon throwing me in the garbage truck was the absolute best way to do it.
It was one of the best moments in the history of Monday Night Raw, and now we know where that little piece of history came from. It was Eric Bischoff who decided to input that idea, having Vince do it instead of John Cena at the end. I do have 3 questions for you. If you have time for those 3 questions, I'll try and make them as special.
Absolutely.
As I can. One is also in 2005. 2005 was the best year. I love 2005. I don't know why. Just everything happened in 2005 that I liked. There was a skit which I enjoyed. It involved you, Chris Jericho, and the storyline. I think he was or going to be the Intercontinental Champion at the time. I think it involved Carlito and even referee Chad Patton. That was a great little segment you guys all did together as well. Did you enjoy that segment, or were you already bored by that time? I think it was in like June or August. I think that was when that happened.
No, I mean, that was a fun segment. Look, and it's one of the reasons why even to this day I love working with Chris Jericho, because Chris is one of the small handful of talents out there today, and even back then, you don't really need a script.
Yeah.
You just need to understand the goal of the scene, and then you can go out there and just improvise and have absolutely a blast doing it. And it comes off more real and more believable to the audience, oftentimes. So I absolutely enjoyed working with Chris, still do to this day. Certainly did in that scene, and Chris brought a lot of passion and energy to his role, which made it work. And anytime you're involved in a scene that works, whether it's because of somebody else or you or whatever, it's always fun, and that was a fun scene.
It was a fun scene, and that's one of my favourites of 2005 as well. The other question I do have is regarding your podcast, 83 Weeks, because you did a different podcast before you teamed up with Conrad, which I did hear and listen to back a few years ago when it first came out. You had the lines of Bill Goldberg on it and stuff like that on it. How did you and Conrad get in contact and to create 83 Weeks on, of course, the ad-free shows.com? I think I do hope I got the right website there.
Yeah. Yes, I did a podcast previously. It was called Bischoff on Wrestling, and my co-host at that time he was a very hardworking young man, a good human being. I loved his name was Nick Hausman, and he's now, I think, he's at a wrestling online site called Wrestling Inc.
Oh, right.
And so he's gone on to do other things, but the chemistry wasn't right. It just wasn't what it needed to be, and neither was the format of the show, which is nobody's fault, because I had never done a podcast before. Mm-hmm. Nick had only spent a brief period of time with a podcast, so Nick didn't have a lot of experience. Neither did I in podcasting. We didn't really have a solid format. And I think more important than all of that, the chemistry between he and I just wasn't there.
Fair enough.
And it was not a fun show to do. I didn't enjoy doing the show. And it's like I said to you earlier, when you get 2 wrestlers in the ring that are having fun working together, it's contagious. It spreads throughout the audience in a positive way. Conversely, when you get 2 wrestlers out there working together, or 2 podcasters out there working together who aren't really having fun, neither does the audience who's watching it or listening to it.
Yeah.
So I made up my mind after doing this show with Nick for, I don't know how long we did it, maybe a year, a little less, I said, I'm going to put the show on hiatus and really think about whether I want to continue doing this, because it wasn't financially successful. It wasn't enjoyable. And when you're spending your time doing something that isn't either enjoyable or financially successful, it's also considered to be, in my opinion, a waste of time. So I thought, okay, I'm going to put the show on hiatus and decide how I can make it more fun, so at least it's enjoyable, or make it profitable. And during that hiatus, Conrad Thompson, who I had met previously about a year before, maybe 2 years before, I had met him. Conrad Thompson was working closely with Bruce Pritchard at the time. And
Gotcha.
Bruce Pritchard and he's one of my best friends. Mm-hmm. And Bruce was having a tremendous amount of success with his podcast with Conrad. So when Conrad called me and said, Eric, you thinking about doing another podcast? I was honest with him and said, yeah, I'm thinking about it, but I'm not really sure. And when Conrad came to me with the format idea that he had, I expressed my concern, because I just didn't feel like anybody. People have been talking about the Monday Night Wars and Nitro and Raw and all the things that went on during that period of time. There's been movies about it or DVDs about it. There's been books written about it. There's been 3,000 shoot interviews that have been done about it or more. It's just like, oh my God, nobody wants to hear about this stuff anymore, Conrad. And he convinced me that I was wrong. So I thought, all right, let's give it a try. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, we tried. And we tried. We launched the show, and we came out of the shoot as one of the #1 wrestling podcasts almost immediately. So it's been a fun journey ever since, and it's turned into a very profitable podcast, one of the most profitable podcasts out there, actually.
Good.
And I have fun doing it, so it checks both of my boxes. I'm having fun, and it's profitable. So I'm all good.
That's the main thing, isn't it? That's the main thing indeed. Because when I was able to get you on the show, I didn't want to bore you with the same questions that you always get. So I thought I'd try and bring different questions to you, as maybe you've never been asked, hopefully, before. But apologies if any of my questions have been asked before.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I don't want to bore you. We're like, oh, not this question again, kind of thing. But my other question to you is, I asked some guests about this because why not? Just to get different takes on different guests and whatnot. Who would you suggest me or recommend me to contact next to have on after the great Eric Bischoff, who should be, by the way, in the Hall of Fame? Any Hall of Fame, to say.
Well, I think, honestly, Tony Schiavone would be a great conversation. Kurt Angle, would be a great I think Kurt Angle might be one of the best recommendations I could make.
Okay.
But
I've scheduled an email with Kurt Angle. I don't know if it will go to the right person regarding Kurt Angle, because on his official website, there's 3 different people who is involved with booking in letting people book Kurt Angle and whatnot. So I'm hoping the email I'm sending to him will go to the right person to then get into Kurt Angle, if that makes sense.
Well, what I would do, Edward, is perhaps send in another email and let him know that you and I have done a show together now.
Okay.
That might get his attention a little bit more, because I'm guessing Kurt Angle, I know how many requests I get to do other people's podcasts. And
actually, can I just say, before interrupting you, I apologize, but I don't want to say, you've made history on this show by being the fastest responser ever so far in me reaching out to guests. So you were the fastest ever for responding. So I thank you very much for responding so fast. Within 2 minutes, I have to say, the fastest ever I would receive a response. So
well, that was probably more coincidence than anything. But I don't often get an opportunity to do podcasts that are based in the UK.
Fair.
And because of that, because I know there's such a large, very solid group of wrestling fans in the UK. There's a massive audience in the UK for wrestling, and I have a ton of respect for them and enjoy interacting with them when I have a chance to tour. But because I get so few opportunities to do UK-based podcasts, I will often respond positively to them. But my point is that I probably get no fewer than 35 to 40, 45 requests to do other people's podcasts almost every week.
Wow.
And
that's a lot.
I don't have time to do them.
Yeah.
And most of them don't really have much of an audience, or they're just starting. So here's what I do. If it's a UK-based podcast or something, for example, in India, which is a big market for wrestling and one that I don't get to tap into too often, they automatically go to the top of the list. If it's somebody who is very polite in terms of the way they reach out and clear and concise, that's important. But also, I love doing podcasts for people who are just starting out, who have never done a podcast before, and are just starting, because it's giving them an opportunity to start off on the right foot, meeting a guest that people know. Not that I'm the best guest to have. In fact, clearly not.
I think you are. I think you're one of the best guests.
There are many better guests to have than me. Bigger names and bigger
names. Really? I would say you're one of the biggest names ever. Really, I don't care. Maybe not in the wrestling in the wrestling term, in the wrestler term, but in the personality term, yes, you are, because you're the one who kind of gave us the Monday Night Wars, kind of thing through Ted Turner.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. My point is, though, whether it's me or somebody else, like a Ric Flair or a Steve Austin or Hulk Hogan, or there's a lot of people out there that have pretty big names that have a much larger footprint than I do. Kurt Angle, for example.
Yeah.
But I like to help people get their start. I like to give people an opportunity. So my key is, if it's a UK-based podcast, if the request to appear is polite and respectful and clear and concise, and if you're starting out, with your very first podcast or just starting out, chances are you'll find yourself at the top of my list.
That's good to hear. Well, I do appreciate that, Eric Bischoff, because it's great to have you on the show, because you are the biggest guest to come on the show now. We were the biggest guest to come up before you was a singer based in Spain called Callum Heaslip, who's a singer who appeared on the Irish version of the Late Late Show. So there you go for that. Just bring that forward to you there, Mr. Bischoff. But yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on this show. I do hope you enjoyed it, and I do hope you will come back on the show again.
Edward, anytime. You now know how to contact me. You know my requisites in terms, and you're already good at it, which is another reason I reached out to you right away. You were very professional and respectful, and I appreciate that very much. So, call me back in a couple months if there's something you want to talk about specifically. Let's fire it up and do it again, my friend. Yeah,
I will indeed. By the way, before I do end this, and before I let you go, Mr. Bishop, because you're a very busy person on this lovely Sunday, can I contact you to make sure I'm emailing the right person regarding the people you've recommended me to this show? Or not?
Yes, I'm not going to read you my email address.
No. I'm just saying, if you just say yes or no, I don't need to give the details.
Yes. Feel free. Feel free.
Cool. Well, we'll do. Thank you for that, Mr. Bishop. Oh, that's hilarious. Well, again, it's been a pleasure. I apologize if I didn't get to your question. You can leave it in the comment section below, and as Mr. Bishop said, he will gladly come back on my show in a few months' time, and we will definitely do it again at some point later this year, Mr. Bischoff. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Edward. And by the way, for any of your listeners, if they have questions that they didn't get answered, you can find me on social media, on Twitter, @ebischoff. And, of course, my podcast is 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff, wherever you get your podcast. And also check out adfreeshows.com. There is a ton of great content there.
And as I say as well, your social medias have been on the screen throughout today's show, off and on. As you said, Twitter, eBischoff, and Instagram, The Real Eric Bischoff. I like how you say The Real Eric Bischoff on Instagram there. Wasn't Eric Bischoff or eBischoff available to you on Instagram?
No, somebody else had already taken them.
Really?
Oh, and there is an imposter Eric Bischoff on Instagram, but I can assure you it has nothing to do with me.
That's great. I'm glad we were able to sort that out. But yes, I'll let you go, Mr. Bischoff. Thank you again. And again, if you got a question for Mr. Bischoff, then contact him through those sources he just told you, because he's a great guy. And again, he may not believe himself, but I think he's one of the biggest names in professional wrestling in the many decades he's been involved in.
All right, my friend, I'm losing you now. I have a bad internet connection, so it's time to wrap this up on my end. Edward, thank you very, very much for all your fans throughout the UK. Thank you for listening to the show, and I look forward to seeing all of you in person as soon as that is possible.
Indeed, and I do hope I get to meet you in person as well in the future when you come to Manchester. But yes, I will let you go by ending the call to you.
Thank you, buddy. Be well.
You too as well. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So that was, ladies and gents, Mr. Eric Bischoff on the Edward Fowler Show. Wow. So there you go. 2 very good suggestions. Mr. Kurt Angle, Tony Schiavone, the great Tony Schiavone from WCW. And again, Mr. Bischoff did say a minute ago that he's glad he come back on the show again, and we are going to make that happen. Mr. Bischoff number 2 will come later this year on The Best Kept Secret on YouTube. This is truly the best kept secret on YouTube. The only place where you can get reality stars, MMA fighters, wrestling personalities. You name it, we probably cover it here on the Fowler Show. And again, if you did enjoy today's episode, and make sure to leave a like, share the video out to all your wrestling friends and general people as well. Everybody knows who Eric Bischoff is, I'm sure. Make sure to subscribe if you're new around here with notifications on, means you're always notified when a new episode drops from my show. We got some great guests lined up, and maybe even more guests coming on the show. We just said that a minute ago. And let me know what you thought of today's episode. Leave a comment in the comments below. Did you enjoy my questions? Did you enjoy Eric Bischoff's answers to those questions? And is there any topics I should talk to Eric Bischoff about? Because I got a few more topics I want to discuss with Eric Bischoff, like tattoos, for instance. Want to go into tattoos, and many other different topics as well. Make sure you do watch AEW, All Elite Wrestling, on ITV4 every Friday, or on Fight TV at 1 a.m. UK time, because he did say, he's teased it, Eric Bischoff will be back on AEW soon. So whenever that will be, stay tuned for that. Also check out WWE as well, because of Eric Bischoff is doing a documentary or something with WWE in the next month as well. It's going to be huge for them as well. What will be, tune in to find out. But from all of us here from the Fowler Show, enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening, and we'll leave it at that, I'm guessing, because there's nothing else to add.